All right, we're ready for the first drive, the shakedown of this car. I've been cranking on this thing since 3 a.m. Just opened the garage door here. I'm gonna take this thing to work. First, I'm gonna grab some coffee. I got a coffee meeting. Let's see. So you may be wondering, how do I get away with this legally? Well, I have brake lights, I have headlights, I have a license plate. I did get this thing titled. Between getting it titled and registered is $500. But I need to shake this thing down. You know, one of the things that I like the most is the ChampCar Infinity Ed that he drives at on the street, and it's a great way to shake down a car and really figure out what's wrong, especially on a new build like this. So let's make sure we tightened everything. Let's see how this thing performs. All right, so I got the window net up, got the belts. It's the first time I'm gonna be testing these. Nick, who's gonna be your co-driver, put these in recently. Hopefully they fit. Let's see here. He's about the same size as me, and I know he'd test fit it, so. All right, so far so good. Now we did update the belts because I had these Schroth belts that I purchased for the Parts Badger car, and they are phenomenal belts. So we did put those in, and then we took the in-date belt and put it over here on the passenger side. All right, let's see if this thing starts up. Okay. Got some electric, that's good. Ignition, I hear the fuel pump, that's good. Clutch in, just in case, neutral. All right, got oil pressure, got fuel pressure. Oil pressure's climbing. All right. Let's try to get out of the garage here. Now this thing does not have an alignment yet. I actually didn't check any of that. Clutch works nice. We just, oh, no brakes. So we just bled the brakes. We just bled the clutch. Hopefully that was just a temporary thing with the brakes there. Yeah, so far so good. We got battery power. Looks like the alternator's working. Coolant temp. I don't see any smoke. I don't smell anything. There is a little bit of vibration. I bet you that's from the engine, but let's start driving. So we do have stable oil pressure, around 50 PSI. A little notchy. Just checking oil pressure, see if we lose any pressure. So I do get a dip in oil pressure under braking. That's not good. Normally it's around 60 PSI, then under braking it dips down to 30. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I was really hoping the way that those baffles were designed that we wouldn't have this issue. But that's the whole reason why I wanted to shake it down, because now we'll have some time to think about it and potentially troubleshoot to see if that's it. Later I'll do some roundabouts and then test the left and the right under constant G load. We'll also check the oil once I get this thing to the office, just see how full it is. Maybe we'll have to add more oil. Now I don't want to do this, but we can overfill the oil if we really needed to. That creates a lot of windage in the crankcase, and you end up losing some pretty significant horsepower, like 10-15 horsepower. But if that's what we need to do, that's what we need to do for this first race here. I don't have the AccuSump on right now because I kind of wanted to see what the oil pressure did. I'm not going to be, you know, going at higher RPM or anything like that under significant load. I just want to test those G-forces. By the way, coolant temp is good. is good, fuel pressure stable, battery stable. The car feels really solid, pulls a little bit, but like I said, it's not aligned one way or another. The brakes feel good, even though I have used race pads in the back and I have brand new street pads in the front for those, but everything seems good. So knock on wood, I guess this first stage is it's going well. Let's see how this goes. Now I don't have a mirror. Let's see if I can use the camera. So the mirror we put in, we ended up breaking that, putting the seatbelt in, so I have a new one on its way. So I'm going to try to look out this little side mirror here. See if I get any lights behind me. Plan is there's a roundabout up here, and I want to continuously pull G and just see how the oil pressure responds, and I'll try to do it at a low RPM so that I don't smoke the motor, just in case I lose oil pressure. Let's see here. But it definitely was dipping from the 60s down to the 50s, but it's never really dropping below that, which is really strange. So I don't know necessarily why that's occurring. Maybe it has something to do with the amount of oil. I would really expect to see a much larger dip. But next I'm going to try some harder braking where I can get some speed going, and then we'll see if I have any oil pressure dips on hard braking. So oil pressure's at 45. It definitely dips into the 30s under hard braking. Now in the corner it was dipping a little bit, but it is really cold out. It's around freezing. I want to check zero on the gauge. So hopefully when I shut the engine off, I can figure out what zero is. Let's take a look here. I mean, it's going all the way down, so that's calibrated. So unfortunately, it's not definitive. It was dipping down into 10. I would know exactly what's happening, and I would lose. I'm losing oil pressure. But dipping down to 30, there's still oil pressure there. It's kind of in the middle. Man, I wish I could figure that out. If RPM was dipping, I could see oil pressure dipping, but I think we have some kind of oil issue. I just don't know what it is. So anyway, I'll be thinking about that. We'll see if I can figure out what our oil problem is. All right, time to go home. Getting buckled in here. So from an oil pressure perspective, under braking, I'm dipping on oil pressure. It's usually around 50, 60 PSI, and then under braking, it dips down to the 30s. So I don't know exactly what's causing that. There's a lot of oil in the engine. I checked the dipstick, we're definitely overfilled. So what I'm gonna try now, just to test something, and I really hope it's not it, which would be the siphon pickup. Now, we were struggling with the oil pickup tube and how to get that mated. We just had to put something together, RTV and O-rings, and I felt okay about it, but you know, maybe we're having issues with that. I think this test will tell us, because what I'm gonna do is turn the engine on, turn the sump on, get all the oil in the sump, then turn it off. That's gonna drop the overall engine oil capacity. And if that drops, and it's gonna drop our oil pressure, I know that it's gonna be sucking in air in that, that tube. And I'll test that under braking as well. I'm gonna take a little bit longer way on the way home, so I'm able to test out the oil pressure under braking as well. So I guess we'll see what we're looking at here. We already talked about some oil pan modifications that we could potentially make. The important thing was getting this car ready to get aligned and corner weighted. Now, if we do need to swap the motor and swap the pan, we actually can get the motor out and back in pretty quick. That is something we could probably do before the race, fingers crossed, assuming we can get the redesign done. We do have extra materials, so we could make that happen, but we'll see. Start her up here. Check the battery. All right, got power so far. Fuel pump is good. Clutch seems good. All right. So far, so good. Got 70 PSI. Now I'm gonna turn on the, was 70 PSI, now it's 50s, 40s. Let me turn on the AccuSump. I honestly don't know if that's doing anything. Now I got that turned off. So the AccuSump should be filled with oil, assuming that this switch worked. I don't know if it did. We'll probably have to check back at the house. All right, anyway, let's get going here. Yeah, it's dipping again into the 30s. And it jumps back up into the 40s. Dipping in the 20s. That's not great. I'm going to turn on the AccuSump and see what the performance is with the AccuSump on. Is actually working, because oil pressure under hard braking is dipping down in the 20s. AccuSump doesn't seem to be working. I don't see a light, so I'm gonna have to check that. Dipped to 35, it stayed to 35 with the AccuSump. I wish it was horrible or good. It's in the middle, it's not horrible or good. So, I have steady oil pressure at 37. Oil pressure is better now that it's hot. And I'm really confused. I don't know why we're having this issue. So, the AccuSump is currently running. Let me show you what I'm looking at here. So, I did get the AccuSump light on. And the issue was my accessory switch was not on. So, I thought of that while driving. Now, coolant temp is good, oil pressure is fine, fuel pressure's been really stable around that, so everything's good to go here. Now, oil level wise, what I'm going to do is close the AccuSump right now. Actually, I'm going to rev it a little. Okay, so revved it to get the oil pressure up, then close the AccuSump. And let's see, I'm going to turn the AccuSump on. Let's see if it gets a spike in pressure. Not really. Huh. That's strange. Let me rev it again. I'm going to check oil level. Maybe the sump is leaking, maybe it's got a leaky valve, but I'm going to check oil, and if the oil is lower than what it was at before, you know, then I know that it's working and it consumed that. So we'll give that a try. I'm going to back this thing into the garage. All right, so back in the garage, and I gotta say, I'm really confused about the oil pressure and whether or not we have an issue. So under braking, seems to go from about 50 psi down to about 30 psi. When it was cold under hard braking, I actually got it to go down into the 20s. Now, later on, it started to get better, and I don't know why. I was braking the same, the RPMs were about the same, and then it was dipping down into the 30s. So I'm gonna check oil level, make sure the AccuSump is storing the oil and it's not leaking out of that valve or the solenoid. So I'm gonna check that. Something else I noticed at the office was an issue with the header bolts. So the header bolts had a really low torque number on them, and it felt like I wasn't applying enough torque, and they actually started to come loose. So I think that's actually the case. I'm going to go back and look at the torque specifications on that, but I will have to retorque the header bolts once this thing cools down. We also have to do a few tests. I want to test, make sure that the fan is running for the radiator, that kicks on at a certain temperature. So we're going to test that a little bit later on. But overall for a shakedown, I'm going to say this was really successful. The car seemed to perform really well. No major issues other than this oil thing, which, God, I wish it was horrible or I wish it was great, but it's in the middle. So it's a tough call on what we should do there, but I'm going to do some thinking, talk to the team, and we'll figure it out. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Please remember to like and subscribe below. Next up, this thing's going to get aligned and get corner weighted. Thanks.